are listening to the Slash and Cast Podcast Network. Enjoy the show.
Hey folks, Justin here with a quick word before we dive in. This is a very special episode here that features myself, Angelique, and Nick, and our guest needs no introduction, but I'll give him a brief one. In this one, we're going to be chatting with the co-founder of Troma Entertainment, Mr. Lloyd Kaufman, about his new film, #Shakespearean shitstorm, cinema history, Toxic Avenger, free speech, and doing drugs. Lots of drugs. So without further ado, here you go.
Greetings, boils and ghouls. This is your comrade, the Crypt Keeper here, reporting dead from the sanctuary of the strange. Tonight's macabre myth is a fright-filled feature, one overflowing with monsters, madness, and magic.
I guess just to break the ice here, Lloyd, why don't you take us back in time to when you were a youngster? You know, what were you into as a kid to kind of spark your creativity? Were you reading a lot, watching a lot of movies?
Well, my mother was a theater person. We had Broadway stars in our house as we grew up. Also, I didn't really do much I didn't see movies very much as a child. I did see Howdy Doody. Loved Howdy Doody. Can never do it today. Princess, Summer, Fall, Winter, Spring. I don't think that would quite work in terms of appropriating the heritage of American Indians. I think Howdy Doody would be run out of town. They also had every show, they'd have a very short silent movie that featured Vic, Clint, and Bullet, three obese dudes who would do these incredible slapstick stunts, and Buffalo Bob would narrate. And my brother and I were like, at the age of 4 or 5, we were totally mesmerized by Vic, Clint, Bullet, now known as Tons of Fun, because we just Googled them to make sure. So my mother was into Broadway and took me to a lot of shows and musicals, especially. I loved musicals as a child. Cried being a gay married man. I wept through every Judy Garland, Liza Minnelli, Barbara Streisand Broadway show. To this day, I love music. Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead is a kind of a musical, and Shakespeare always had singing and dancing. And both Romeo and Juliet and the most recent #Shakespearean shitstorm do indeed have songs, original songs, pay homage to the bard. Actually, the Toxic Avengers were made into a Broadway musical. Ran a year and went to London's West End. I've been to North Korea. Been all over the place.
I saw it in Atlanta.
Oh, wasn't that great? I saw it there too.
Yes, it was fantastic. And that was actually right after I got to meet you. I got to meet you at Cinema Wasteland a few years ago.
We love Cinema Wasteland. We've been going there for years, but with the COVID thing, we don't want to get wasted. But I hope to go this year. I'm heading for Texas, where they don't even wear masks or something. What do? They sue people who have whatever it is. It'll be interesting going to 4 or 5 cities. Believe it or not, we have a huge fan base in Texas. So clearly not everybody is, to the right of Alan.
So Lloyd,
Yes,
what made you finally decide to take the leap and pursue a film career? I know you graduated from Yale, so what makes a Yale graduate say, screw China, I'm going to go make some movies?
Well, very good point. I majored in Chinese studies, but basically, freshman year, I was roomed with a movie nut who ran the Yale Film Society, Robert Edelstein, and he and his coterie were heavy into auteur theory of filmmaking. Samuel Fuller, John Ford, Fritz Lang, Renoir, Mizoguchi, the real Howard Hawks, the real auteur of cinema. I, being a very cultured, I speak fluent French and I read it. In the office of the Yale Film Society was a stack of Cahiers de Cinema, which is the magazine of the Cinémathèque Française, with articles in those days by Claude Chabrol and Jean-Luc Godard and Truffaut, and they were journalists transitioning. Right? Mm-hmm. I can't use that word. They were journalists moving, transitioning something else. They were moving from journalism to art, to making the art. And they came up with this concept of auteur, where the director is the sculptor, the heart, soul, and brains of the director should infuse the movie. And that's what the French were saying was art. And unfortunately, being a stupid freshman at Yale, I bought into all that. And of course, since I could read all that stuff in French, I really was brainwashed, lavage de cerveau, brainwashed. So I decided eventually to stay in New York City. I had two opportunities. Actually, you know what else helped me? There was a movie called To Be or Not to Be, Shakespeare, with Jack Benny, Carol Lombard, and Robert Stack, directed by none other than Ernst Lubitsch. And then, of course, there's the son of Lubitsch, but that's something else. What you call wordplay. Anyway, Ernst Lubitsch is one of the greatest directors in history, as I'm sure you know. And his masterpiece, among his masterpieces, is To Be or Not to Be, where Jack Benny switches places with Hitler. It's wonderful. It's crazy, but so disciplined. So it's yin and yang. My major at Yale was Chinese studies, and Taoism was a big deal for me. And there's Ernst Lubitsch. It's a crazy movie, but totally disciplined, totally organized, beautifully. I mean, it's just a perfect film. And I was watching that, I think it was like junior year at Yale, and probably 2 or 3 other people in the theater. People were not, most of the Yaleys wanted Russ Meyer or James Bond. They weren't too much into Joseph H. Lewis or Samuel Fuller or Borzage or those folks. So there'd only be a few people to show up for our screenings. But the whole year would be financed by a weekend of James Bond and a weekend of Russ Meyer. The entire year of the Yale Film Society would be financed. I was kind of just hanging out with them because I knew nothing about film. And these guys were the real intellectuals. And Robert Edelstein was such a good guy, a sweet guy. We made a movie together based on Hawthorne's Rappaccini's Daughter, our junior year. He directed. And then the next year we made The Girl Who Returned with my Bolex 16 millimeters, basically a silent film. You can't shoot, sing, sound, but it had music and effects. And we'd show our movies at colleges, charge $1. And the gimmick of a student-made feature-length movie in the psychedelic 60s was a gimmick, and nobody set fire to the seats, so that was a valuable lesson. And also, with The Girl Who Returned, I had sort of a sexy poster put around campus. Bingo, we had a big crowd. Well, Borzagi's Moonrise was playing the same night. It was just a poster that said Frank Borzagi's Moonrise, 8:30, nobody, 3 people. But because I had a young woman on her back with her love pillows under a tight T-shirt, people assumed it was sexy, but actually she was a long distance runner and she had collapsed after a race and was sweaty. So people came in. So I learned 2 things at Yale. 1, no matter how bad the movie is, people won't ask for their money back. And 2, if you put a little something in the poster that's a little bit sexy, you may get people to sit down and watch your movie, no matter how bad it is.
Right.
Hey.
Well, in those days, Yale basically had one history of film. There was one filmmaking course, but because Robert and I had made a feature-length movie, Murray Lerner didn't want us. We were I was too wise guy. He preferred the ass lickers who made the psychedelic, like the current, the also woke psychedelic movies. And here we are making a 70-minute beginning, middle, and end based on Hawthorne and another feature-length fictional movie. And in fact, the one with the Hawthorne movie by Robert Edelstein, Perry King, who became quite a Hollywood star and TV star, and became inches playing Stallone's part. The producers actually thought Perry King was the star of, not the producers, but the bigwigs at United Artists. They thought it was going to be Perry King. There was a miscommunication. They saw Stallone. They thought, hey, wait a minute, that isn't Perry King. That's a factoid for you. I mean, factoid for you. Angelique gets it. Went way over Justin's head, but Angelique, she gets the sophisticated humor.
She is the most sophisticated of us.
What can I say?
What can you say?
Did you get support from your parents when you decided to take that film route, or were they pushing you to go a different path since you had started in Chinese studies?
They were, they couldn't give a shit, really. They were great parents. I loved them, but they're very unusual. A lot of, I've been married for 50 years. My folks were very kind of Dolce Vita types, swinging 60s. In fact, they were best friends with, I grew up with Oliver Stone, and his parents and my parents were, in fact, his father and my father, I think, were best friends. And my father donated $50,000 to Trinity School, where I was on the board, in the name of Oliver's father. So we all grew up in this kind of European, Euro, sophisticated compared to our age group. There were things we saw that I can't imagine, parties. And my folks had sort of an arrangement before they split up. Interesting, wasn't, we didn't live in the Leave It to Beaver world. I remember my father, toward the end, he said, "Oh, I'm so lucky. I've got a son with movies that make no money. I got another son who's baking bread, and a daughter or something." I don't know. Basically, all his progeny were failures, but that has not proven to be true. In fact, since he died, suddenly we all came to life and been moderately successful. My brother, by the way, Charles Kaufman, and again, thank you so much for being interested in my 50 years. My brother made Mother's Day, directed Mother's Day, which probably is our best movie. Certainly the best horror-ish, although it's not horror, it's satire mixed with horror and comedy. But it's Eli Roth's favorite horror film. That is a masterpiece. And my sister was the art director. And I know Toxic Avenger is very famous, but the Mother's Day, that could be studied in film classes. It's a perfect low-budget film, and it has something to say, and it's a satire of what was then TV and that world, and and it's terrific. And my brother made 2 more movies that are fabulous, but he couldn't talk the talk to get where the creepy people like Abel Ferrara, whatever he talks. My brother's infinitely more talented than Abel Ferrara, but they like, the agents and the managers and the little boy suits. They like that Oliver Stone creepy, cursing, cocaine, whatever it is, language. They like the Abel Ferrara beating women in front of people. Kind of stuff. That's only my opinion, but my brother was actually extremely well educated, incredibly talented. He's the nicest guy in the world. Has the best sense of humor, but he couldn't move up from Troma, and you cannot live. I take it from me, buddy. You can't live directing Troma movies.
Lloyd, post-college, when do you eventually meet Michael Hers, and how do we get from Yale to Troma?
My brother Charles and Michael Hers were counselors at Camp Terrigo, probably some kind of a reform school camp. I'm not sure. Michael Hers met his wife there, and he and my brother, as I say, is wonderful and funny as hell and the nicest guy in the world, as is Michael Hers. So they became buddies. And I had meanwhile gone to Yale, and Michael was number 1 in his class at the very best high school in Manhattan. I think it's called Attica. It's upstate. No, that's a prison. No, it's Stuyvesant, the very best school in Manhattan, in New York City, public school. And Michael was number 1 in his class. And so he got into Yale, but a couple of years after I did. So my brother said, "Hey, go look up my brother." And Michael met me, and he hated me immediately. But I had a TV in my room. And in those days, in the 60s, not everybody had a TV. I had a black and white TV, portable TV that the screen would do this, and I'd have to slam it, and that kind of a black and white TV. But Michael didn't have one, so he wanted to watch TV. So he'd come and watch movies and Marx Brothers and whatever. Things like Marx Brothers festivals on certain channels. We didn't have cassettes or Blu-ray or streaming. We had none of that stuff. And yet Michael Hers has seen every movie made. I mean, unbelievable how much he knows about everything. But he's so quiet and non-assuming, a good guy. But he knows so much more than the typical movie critic, without a doubt. Not more than you guys, of course.
I might agree or disagree with you.
Just to give you a sense of the relationship, my father, after seeing my first theatrical film, Miraculous, got into some movie theaters with Oliver Stone in it, Lynn Lowry, called Battle of Love's Return. And we had a little press conference, and the Variety asked him, in those days, Variety actually covered stuff like this, new, unheard of directors on teeny budgets. And they asked my father, who has a big part in the movie. In fact, his scene is the funniest, Battle of Love's Return. They asked him, what did you like best about the movie, making the movie with your son? He said, I liked it in the movie when my son was killed. That was terrific. Sort of Michael Hurst, who my father loved better than he loved me. Michael Hurst says to me, I'm going to the Pennsylvania Horror Con. You're already deep in the reach of the underground. Michael says, as I'm leaving with Rocco, who you met, my assistant, he said, don't embarrass me. That's my partner. Don't embarrass me. Needling, lots of needling.
So you and Michael hit it off, obviously. When did you guys decide to pursue and make a company?
Well, he was going to law school and he didn't care for it. But his beautiful wife, Maris, who works for Troma for 50 years, she took her mother, to see a movie called Cry Uncle, an X-rated movie. But I had a huge credit, so she saw my name, and it happened to be directed by John G. Avildsen, who the next film was Rocky. Troma still has it on Troma now. It's called Cry Uncle, and it's hilarious. It had an X rating when it came out, but now it's a cool R. It's wonderful. But at any rate, Maris covered up the X rating with her thumb and took her mother. And Cry Uncle had like a full page in the Times. In those days, you could put together 80 theaters for an independent movie. It wasn't that they were all in one theater chain. There was something called competition. So Maris put her finger over the X rating and took her mom to see it. They loved it, and they saw, my name up on screen big. So Maris said, why don't you go talk to Lloyd? So poor Michael went in and chatted with me, and next thing he knew, they joined up, and Sugar Cookies, which was the movie we were finishing, they got on that ride, which of course was a huge flop. Probably the only X-rated movie in history to lose money. Although it's an excellent movie. It's our take of Vertigo, directed by Ted Gershuni. Oliver Stone was on that one as a producer. Mary Warner, Lynn Lowry, Warhol people. It's a good film, but it's a little boring. I should have directed. I raised all the money, and I should have directed it. But Gershuni was older than I, and there was another partner, fast-talking guy with a toupee, and stupid me, Candide. Your son's great. I got some friends at Yale. They might put up some money, and my old friend Oliver. I used up all my rich friends from Yale and Trinity School on Sugar Cookies, and then a movie we made in Israel, which couldn't miss. And Michael came along for that ride too. The worst film ever made, but with the cooperation of Menachem Golan and Yoram Globus, who were running something called Canon, whose first iteration I worked for in 1969 or so. But they were the boys from Tiberias who took over Canon and almost took over MGM until they imploded.
What was the name of that movie? I didn't catch it.
Big Gus, What's the Fuss? And
Gotcha.
the Troma team, to embarrass us, has put it up on, I think, Troma Now, just to be... But it is indeed, if you want to see a bad film. And we lost control. It was all, we went over to Israel to make it. Well, it's a boring story, but I talked about it in my first book, All I Need to Know About Filmmaking. I learned from the Toxic Avenger. So Nicholas, if you've read that book, you can read the sad story of, I used up every influential contact I had, everyone with money, no place to go. But somehow Michael Hurst steered the boat, and we survived. We started acquiring and distributing other people's movies and I would get work as a production manager, like Rocky and Saturday Night Fever, and where I was on the production, not necessarily production manager, but Rocky, we produced all the Philadelphia stuff on sub rosa, secretly. So there's 8 days of filming in Philadelphia. All those iconic scenes from Rocky, running up the steps, the Italian market, the pet store, the exterior of the gym, all the steady cam usage. All of that was done by the Troma team by John Avildsen's crew from Cry Uncle and the Troma team, all non-union and all under wraps until the Teamsters found out, and they were pretty rough in those days. So the production went back to California, but I stayed to get my legs broken. But I also did behind the scenes. My Super 8 camera, which I used for auditions on our own films, I filmed stuff behind the scenes in 1977, and so I got the second movie. I got the second use of the Steadicam, how we did it. I have exactly how I filmed how we shot the Stallone running up the steps. Mm-hmm. And Avildsen, even the director, didn't even remember that he was on a baby legs. It wasn't the big shot, the money shot was on the baby legs. And there were all sorts of interesting things in my footage. And Avildsen cut the footage down to about 15 minutes. And we wrote narration for it and recorded a narration track together. And it's a lot of fun. It's a behind the scenes, that you get on so many movies. But you see that one of the greatest movies in history was made like a Troma movie with the people, the citizens who are being background actors for nothing would hose down the street themselves in front of their houses to make it look nice at night. And it's a wonderful little piece. It's on the Fox Rocky Blu-ray box, which they never sent me, of course. In fact, they put a takedown notice on Avildsen and me to take that thing down. And we gave it to them. We gave it to them for free. It's my footage. It's Avildsen's movie. Anyway, Avildsen, time was too short. But he fought it, and eventually they understood it was our footage. They advertised a lot. I think I had never seen the box set, but I am told that the first thing on the back of the box is special behind the scenes from Lloyd Kaufman, the Troma, Toxic Troma.
Lloyd, you said that the Philadelphia scenes were non-union. Does that mean they were going to try to shoot the Philadelphia scenes in California?
Yes, a good point. Yes, that was the thing. The producers, because Stallone and Avildsen insisted that Stallone play the main part, and were they right. The producers only had $1 million. So how were they going to, back in the 76, that was probably a lot more than it is now. It's still about 8 times what a Troma movie would be. But a tiny budget for United Artists. So they didn't have enough money to shoot a union film in Philadelphia. So Avildsen called me up and said, hey, can you get the Cry Uncle people together, the crew, and go down to Philadelphia? And at the time, Mayor Rizzo, thanks to Stallone, I think Mayor Rizzo had sort of a Damon Runyon. They didn't have film commissioners in those days, but he had sort of a Damon Runyon character, Joe Letizia, a sweet guy, and his daughter came friendly. His daughter, Jody, who was about 9 or 10, is in the movie. And Joe got us, sort of, Stallone knew what locations he wanted, and he sent me a list, and Avildsen sent me some photos. And Letizia and I went around to the different neighborhoods, like South Philly and places that are in the movie. And we sweet-talked people into giving us the locations for free, basically. Pat's Steaks, which is, I don't know whether you're familiar with it, but 24 hours, there's a line. I mean, it's unbelievable. And the family was so nice. They closed the business. They let us film. And nobody knew anybody on this film. The only one anybody might have heard of was Burgess Meredith. They certainly didn't know Mr. Maniac, Joe Spinell. They didn't know Talia. They didn't know Stallone. They didn't know Avildsen. And how nice were those people? Basically, the people in Philadelphia was unbelievably nice, really nice people, especially in South Philly, where a little bit sketchy neighborhood. They were incredibly lovely to it. We could have kept going, but the Teamsters found out, I think, 7th or 8th day, and the producers and the rest of the stars felt time to go back. But those 8 days, boy, right? Imagine if Rocky hadn't been made with those.
Right. I mean, you really can't recreate Philadelphia and California accurately.
No, it's a big mistake. It's a big mistake. They made a movie called about Alan Freed called Hot Wax something or other. And they shot New York for L.A. It stunk. It was awful. It gets it. The public understands. The public's pretty damn smart. They got Toxic Avenger much faster than the industry did. The people in our area, Troma is kind of in an area over there. We're like a Cuisinart of genres. But the people that I meet at these conventions, like San Diego Comic-Con or Alamo Drafthouse, other horror, sci-fi people. Stuart Gordon, for example, brilliant. He reads, he listens, he's got some, wonderful, kind, generous people. Roger Corman, the best. Stan Lee, the best. James Gunn, the best. Eli Roth, the best. It's so interesting. There is a very kind-hearted person that seems to be attracted to our universe, so to speak. How about you guys? I mean, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Like I was just going to say,
Yeah.
to us,
Yeah.
guys like you, Charles Band and Roger Corman, you guys are trailblazers that have made the movies we love. I was going to ask you if you had much interaction with Corman or Charles Band
Yes,
yourself.
Corman and I have been very buddies. In fact, we just saw him and Julie, his wife, because Mary, his youngest daughter, had an art show here, and his kids called me Uncle Lloydie. That's kind of cool. And my wife and I went to we went to the art show. There's 92-year-old Roger and Sharp as a Tack, and he's remaking with Paramount yet another iteration of Plant movie.
Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah, wonderful. Because, the show's back on 42nd Street. Wonderful off-Broadway version of it. Hilarious, terrific. So I think it's good time for Roger and Paramount. And Stan Lee and I were friends for 50 years. Jacques D'Amboise, New York City Ballet. We made pro bono movies for him for 30, 40 years. Avildsen introduced us, and the first movie Avildsen directed. A lot of really interesting people with whom I became very close. Lemmy, quite sad, they're all dying.
Yeah.
I know.
Actually, there was a man on Class of Newcomb High, the first one, Tom Perry, a wonderful special effects man, passed away. His wife, Jill, just left me a voicemail. If I'm going to post something, hashtag Toxie Weeps. But unfortunately, Jill, when she left her phone number, it got a little bit garbled, and I can't call her. By chance, Jill Perry is listening. You are in our prayers. Troma will certainly pay tribute to Tom.
Usually you have to pivot or adapt in business. So when did you notice sort of the shift from physical media to more digital platforms and streaming, and how do you feel about it?
Well, we got into VHS very early. We were lucky. The studios were suing the makers of Beta, Cam, and VHS. And the majors and the MPAA, Jack Valenti, basically Satan to come down to earth. He's
the enemy of art.
Yes, exactly. He's owned, well, he's gone away now, but the MPAA was owned by the cartel that runs the industry. And they totally destroyed people's careers and people's companies. We got into VHS immediately because we're how shall I say the word? How could I say the 50 years of desperation? Does that ring a bell? Always any kind of new technology, that's where we did well, right? We went down to Norfolk, Virginia with Squeeze Play, a movie that no theater would show, and we got a sneak preview. We actually brought the actors there and did a full-on press to Norfolk, Virginia, and the movie had a sneak preview with the In-Laws, two great comedians, Charles Grodin and somebody equally as good who I can't remember. Wonderful film. But Squeeze Play, an R-rated raunchy comedy before Porky's, around the time of maybe before Animal House. The audience loved it. They loved it. That's how we got kind of started with theaters, thanks to the public. It's never easy. We get constantly, right now, hashtag Shakespeare shitstorm, that hasn't gotten into one festival except Fangoria in Montreal, and that's because they're French. And they love Troma, and they don't mind the word shit, and they don't mind lots of happy-looking naked people and other stuff. I hope you get to see the movie. Rocco sent you a link?
I have not seen it yet.
What? Oh,
nope.
Well, if you email me, Lloyd will send it to you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's okay. I had plenty of Troma to watch last night.
Yeah.
But, people are afraid of anything different. So, we made the Toxic Avenger. Nobody wanted to play it. It took 2 years before we got a theater. We made Class of Newcomb High. Oh, the Class of Newcomb High is okay. But, the Toxic, it's not as good as Toxic Avenger. Then we made whatever came next. It's just not, it's okay. But Romeo and Juliet, it's pretty good. But it's, this is James Gunn's movie. It's pretty good. But, really, Terra Firma is so much better. I mean, you can't win. So you just have to do, as the night turns to day, as the sky turns to blue, this is what you can do. in everything you do, to thine own self be true.
There you go.
That's what Eminem said as he got his first arrest. Oh no, Shakespeare. I got it mixed up with Shakespeare.
Eminem, Shakespeare.
It's easy to do.
You know,
Very
that happens to me
similar.
all the time.
It's true.
Where are you guys? If you don't
I'm
mind
in
my
South
asking.
Carolina.
Oh, where?
I'm close to Augusta, sort of the Georgia, South Carolina border, where the Masters is played.
Sobered in Georgia, which is close to Savannah.
Nice.
I'm just north of Birmingham, Alabama.
Wow. Interesting. My wife is from north, but we go to Litchfield, South Carolina, and Huntington, North Carolina. You know, we're around South Carolina quite a bit. In fact, we did something in the studio there too. D'Angelo, what's his name? Dino D'Angelis. There's a studio in North Carolina,
Okay.
Wilmington. Yeah.
Wilmington,
Okay.
yeah. Rough House. Yeah.
And of course, Savannah has got the amazing College of the Arts, University of the Arts. Wow, I did a master class there, and the lady who runs it, who created it, is amazing. She has a wonderful sense of humor. She gets everything from the most sophisticated down to trauma. You know.
Well,
I don't
next
think
time you're in the area, let us know. We'll have a bite.
Indeed, she's very lovely. In fact, I sent her a cartoon cell from our cartoon Toxic Crusaders, and she sent a lovely thank you note mentioning Toxie. Yeah, well, certainly we're down in fact, no, we're going to somewhere in South Carolina for a family vacation. We're coming up this summer. We're going to be down there, a place that allows mutant grandchildren, all that kind of stuff.
I can understand coming here for vacation, but as someone who lives here, it's just hell on earth constantly with the
You know, my daughter lives in Charlotte, who was director of photography on Return to Nukem and has acted. She's the young, she plays Audrey in Terra Firma. She is working she shoots a movie in Alabama. I think she's living in Birmingham.
Wow.
If I'm not
really?
mistaken. She works with Andrew, the guy who did Jinxed. They are making a very detailed movie about the Alabama prison system. She's based there and has been living there for a couple of years. I mean, she comes up to see us every once in a while, but basically she's living there. And Andrew comes down there occasionally, but they also did a follow-up. Do you know the Jinxed thing?
I'm not familiar.
I don't.
It's a billionaire, New York real estate billionaire, may or may not have killed his wife and another woman. He went on trial, basically was acquitted. Andrew.
In Alabama?
This is the one where he
No,
had
it had
his
nothing to do with
he was
Alabama.
talking.
He's
I'm sorry.
From New York.
Okay.
Okay.
But
This is one- They were backstage or something, and his mic was live, and he
he went
admitted
to
it.
the bathroom.
Yes.
He went to the
Yes.
bathroom, and he says to himself, "Oh yeah, I killed her. I killed her."
Oh, wow.
And so there's a second. There was a second trial. So there's another documentary. There's another series about. It's fascinating. It's terrific because I shouldn't be talking about it because I think A, I don't know anything, and B, maybe they're trying to keep it on the down low. But it's going to be the first documentary series was incredible. The second one's going to be even more incredible, and there's going to be a third one, sort of about a film within a film within a film. And then this other thing about the Alabama prison system is beyond belief. You couldn't write this stuff.
Right. What a shit system. Like just saying, Alabama is one of the worst.
It is. It is, absolutely.
Horrible. I mean, it's like worse than Midnight Express by my old second grade buddy, Oliver Stone. Oh, no, he wrote it. He didn't direct it. Alan Parker directed it. Uncle Lloydie took a lot of acid in the 60s. I pardon me for talking in the third person, but I'm very well educated. I've read a lot. I know so much about film history, so much more than the people who pretend to be guiding our aesthetic tastes. The people who are afraid to say any, we have free speech as long as we don't say anything. I know an awful lot, and I love cinema, which I don't believe that one of the companies you mentioned loves cinema. I'm very sorry. And I ain't talking about the bigger company. I don't want to go any further. But
Okay.
Are you telling me do you think that Full Moon should be in a class with the people there was somebody major you mentioned. Oh, Roger Corman?
Yeah, Corman.
Full Moon couldn't lick Corman's ass. Full Moon is a piece of shit on the ass of God, and yes, he makes a lot more money than I do. I'm sure he
Oh,
does.
fuck.
But I believe that what we are doing are serious movies. And I don't think Evil Bong Part 18 can compare. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's sausage. And then there's Beyond Filet Mignon, Impossible Burger, vegan film, namely #Shakespeare.
On that subject, do you view the Troma films as high satire? Because I mean, I think they are too.
Absolutely.
But I mean, that is your intention.
Hey, the Toxic Avenger was made in 1982 or 83. It took 30 or 40 years, but finally they get it. And you've got a wonderful young director. You've got Peter Dinklage, a Broadway, a stage of stars, screen, and that crazy show on streaming, which I couldn't follow because there's so many characters.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
All the incest threw me off.
Well, wonderful. Romeo and Juliet is a propaganda film in favor of incest.
Yeah.
So yes, I take what we do, and Michael Hers also very seriously. But Michael, probably more than I, enjoys stirring the shit. He just doesn't go blabbing about it.
Right.
But, we're very serious about what we do. We just don't take ourselves too serious. But I'll tell you, you look at Romeo and Juliet, which James Gunn wrote. Look at it today. It's almost, you don't even look at the sexy stuff. It's, after Cyrus, what's her name? Miley Cyrus, and we're in a different age in 1993. Combat Shock. Check out Combat Shock by Buddy Giovinazzo.
Oh, yeah.
It took about 20 years to break into profit. But that's one of the greatest, darkest movies ever made. The best PTSD movie in history, in my opinion. PTSD movie. It's totally appropriate for the poor bastards coming back from this other phony war we've been having, Iraq and the other place, Afghanistan.
Right.
The poor bastards, they got PTSD. Combat Shock is their movie, and it's doing very well right now. Also, Terra Firma suddenly has a movie that...
we take Troma aesthetics to heart.
Yeah, well, there's really a lot there, I mean, also, look at all the wonderful talent. Even Vincent D'Onofrio, he was basically an extra in the first Turn On. But every time he was in a scene, he did such great comedy and such wonderful stuff that we basically wrote a featured part for him right as we were filming the movie. So his Vincent D'Onofrio's first featured role is he was discovered by us. And not to, munch, I could go for 2 hours talking about those people. But, there's a way to rise up through the, if you're just a background player, if you're if you sort of have a little gumption, you can easily get the attention of the senile director. Just ask the people on #Shakespeare Shitstorm. Some of whom play Hannah, who did some of our CGI. She plays about 8 parts. Some of the other actors too. They play, and of course they're not just actors. They're doing special effects or props. A holistic approach. I can't wait for you to see it. I think you. I don't want to get your hopes up too much, but I'll tell you, there has never been a better interpretation of the Tempest, and I've seen most of them. And up till now, Derek Jarman's British version, which is wonderful. It's a masterpiece. It, to me, is the best. And I would say #Shakespeare Shitstorm is probably more profound and more of its time and more gutsy than Jarman's. I really believe that #Shakespeare Shitstorm is the best treatment of the Tempest. It's definitely better than the woman who did Titus. She did a Tempest with a woman playing Prospero that didn't work. But Titus, oh my God, that's incredible. And she also made a Beatle movie, wonderful film too. And she did, if they would have let her alone, she would have made a beautiful, Julie Taymor. She was directing the Spider-Man Broadway musical. And if they would have let her alone, she's a genius, but they felt the suits had to interfere, and as a result, Spider-Man ended up being the biggest disappointment in Broadway history. And Stan Lee was very disappointed. He told me that it was horrible for him. His fans were upset. People think that if the Toxic movie stinks, the big budget one, they're going to blame me, of course.
Yes.
They don't understand that it's the director's event. But the good news is Macon Blair and Alex Garcia, the two people controlling the film, they are doing a great job. You'll see.
Yeah, we were just talking about Macon Blair, and I'm always hesitant with reboots and remakes, but I would trust Macon Blair.
Yeah, he has no reason to do it other than he loves it. He only does what he's sincere about. So, I think we got something. I have a feeling it's going to be historic because it'll be better than the original and probably incredibly more ship disturbing in a mainstream way. I mean, there's some pretty wild stuff in there.
I saw an interview where you said The Tempest was your favorite Shakespearean play. Why is that?
Well, Justin, first of all, I saw it with my mother when I was about 9 years old. I don't know if you've seen my brother's film Mother's Day, but she and my brother and me were the models for that. So that made The Tempest especially dear to me. And Maurice Evans played Prospero, old man. And then it was on TV with Maurice Evans again, I think, and Lee Remick playing Miranda, Roddy McDowell playing Ariel. Guess who played Caliban, the monster? Richard Burton. Can you imagine?
Oh, wow.
Anyway, that's a wonderful, it's just a TV version, so it's very black and white and 16, but it's true to Shakespeare. And The Tempest has always, it's got a monster, it's got a romance, it's got fairy, it's got storms and action and passion. I wanted to do it when we were doing Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet. Instead, I wasn't old enough. I wanted to be able to be Prospero, right? To think about what's going to be like. And I get it. Prospero was a nobleman banished from his kingdom to a shitty island of the monster and fairies and all that stuff. And he was a magician. I'm old and lost a lot of power and banished further and further down into the bowels of the bowels of the mainstream. Hashtag shitstorm, continue the metaphor, and whale bowels specifically. And so I get the idea of losing power, not to mention the fact that I've had a knee replacement and the acid and pot and so I'm getting a little how do you say it, sketchy in the brain. So I can relate to it, God damn it. And it's got a monster, it's got the magic and it's got wonderful. It's made for me. I played Prospero, and I don't want to be too much of a spoiler, but I can't imagine any other 75-year-old human playing Prospero. I think they would have had a heart attack and died. And I am kept alive by pure venom, pure bitterness, pure hatred for everybody.
Oh, you'll be around for a while then.
Nothing could kill me. Wait till you see the movie. Check it out and tell me it's a pretty, if nothing else, very physical for old.
I'm excited for that now. That sounds
very
amazing.
Excited.
Well, you are awfully nice, and thank you very much. Sorry, I've been talking too much, but
you're fine.
Thank you.
No, this is your interview. We want you to talk.
Lloyd, just speaking on the Hollywood version that's coming out of the Toxic Avenger, Troma's always kind of worked with low budgets and done their own thing. So how do you feel about it? Does it feel weird to you, considering Troma's history, that this big budget Troma movie adaptation's coming out?
I'm vindicated, right?
Right. Yeah.
My whole career around Toxic. He's on Mickey Mouse. We made 4 Toxic movies. I'm the one that said, hey, let's do a musical. And I convinced my literary agent that it should be a musical, and he got a guy to write a musical. And then there was another musical that fans did, and that led to the real musical, the Broadway people who showed up. I believed in Toxic. I mean, I'm not surprised. What I am surprised with is how stupid the mainstream has been. It's an environmental film, for fuck's sake. 20 years before Al Gore even heard of the internet and environment. And yet, we're very unappreciated. I guarantee you, if we were a vassal of one of the conglomerates, let's say we were working for Fox Searchlight or Sony Classics, we'd be making a woke, oh so acceptable, way out film. We'd be taking such huge chances that we'd get on The View maybe or on CNN.
Good Morning America.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great? What's her name? Rhoda? No, not Rhoda. Not Rosie. No, Rosie's cool. The fat one is cool.
Kelly,
I love her.
Kelly and
Hoda. Who's the one with Bush's daughter? 2 of them.
I have no clue.
She's on
Joy
Channel
Behar and all that.
They're on Channel 7. She got a kind of a weird name. She's old, but she looks great in person. And she works with Bush, Jennifer Bush in the morning.
You got me.
It's like Good Morning
We
America.
don't watch
later.
the news.
It's kind of like at 9 o'clock. If you go to a gym, you'll see it in front of all the male bicycle machines. They love that stuff.
But Lloyd, I got a question for you. I stole this question from Mick Garris because he asked his guest this, and I think it's a great question. So,
And what a successful guy he is.
Mick's awesome.
Wonderful, great, way ahead of his time.
What are the hallmarks of a Lloyd Kaufman film to Lloyd Kaufman?
I think I should talk more about Troma.
Right, yeah.
Because
a Troma film, that's fine.
I think people who go there, they know that they are going to go on a ride they've never been on. And as a result, even though I only have one, I'm Willie Loman from in Texas. I have one night at 5 towns. It's like Willie Loman, Death of a Salesman. Respect should be served. But in any event, there's nothing I can do about it other than to tell people, every theater is sold out so far. The one next week in Oklahoma City is still filling up, and Lubbock, Texas is still filling up. The fans get it. They love it. And I think they know they're going to have some kind of a roller coaster ride. They may love, hashtag Shakespeare shitstorm. They may hate Romeo and Juliet. They know they'll never forget When Nature Calls or Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD. They're open to having some real emotion. Quite frankly, they want to be offended. And the fans tell me that if anyone is offended by a Troma movie, it's their problem because they're fucked up in the head. There's nothing really offensive in a Troma movie. The women, all the movies that I've made, the women are the main characters. Romeo and Juliet, Juliet's the main character. Toxie, it's his blind, blonde, bombshell significant other who stops him from being a yuppie. Terra Firma, it's the non-male production assistant who takes up charge and leads the rest of them. I mean, unless you've got severe emotional problems, you will not be offended by any Troma movie. In fact, you'll be enlightened. You will be somewhere you've never been. And if you know anything about anything, and if you've read any book, and if you read any newspaper, even once a year, you'll have fun with every single Troma movie because there are themes within ripped from today's headlines. Just like Samuel Fuller, who you ought to Google him if you're not familiar with him, and I wouldn't blame you if you weren't. We own one of his movies called Shark, but the movie you need to see is the one about the lunatic asylum. Shock Corridor, oh man, you've got to see that. All his movies, they're terrific. And he gave me a lot of advice. He loved Troma's War, and those are my gods. So I think, people who really want to have an experience, have some genuine emotion. My stepmother from Germany, my father's second wife, cried during the first screening of Toxic Avenger because the pathos, right? Here's this poor guy. She had to walk across Europe at 9 years old after the war, after World War II. So she's this poor gym janitor who gets thrown in acid and becomes this sad monster hero. His mother doesn't want him anymore, was turned out by his citizens, and she wept. She got the same thing. She had to leave. She had to run away from Germany because the Russians were going to kill her. So, pathos in all our movies. I feel crying right now.
So, on that subject, it seems like in Troma films, like we said, there's satire, obviously, and you're always punching up at, in Toxic Avenger, for instance, you're punching up at people who are hurting the environment. And with the whole gym angle, you're sort of punching up at 80s standards of beauty and whatnot. Is there anything in those old movies that you feel like has not aged well? And over time, has your method shifted with the times, do you think?
I think what has shifted the most is that we have embraced new technologies and that we have become more and more wanting to try to change things. For example, our fans created a very amusing answer to the Academy of Oscars campaign. They know that nobody's watching the Oscars and that the public couldn't give a wet fart about who wins the Oscars. So they tried to come up with a wonderful idea. Let's have a best public figure, like the festivals do. The public's favorite movie. So let's do that. So immediately these Hollywood producers start gaming the system. The PR firms are flooding the hashtag Oscars fan favorite with all sorts of bullshit about Army of the Dead, was it? Army of the somebody. That was a huge flop, but a very expensive movie. So our fans decided to put up hashtag Shakespeare shitstorm, and that began flooding the Academy's hashtag fan film favorite. So then we decided to join in on it. It took a lot of work, wasted a lot of, it certainly didn't bring us any revenue, nor did it bring us friends. But just the idea of those fuckers from the bullshit Oscar Academy having to deal with that and trying to think that they're going to get an honest answer out of a public prize when you've got the public relations firms gaming Rotten Tomatoes. Look what happened to Harry Knowles. He was honest. He was actually giving peer group opinions, and he got taken down by some woke scum women. I also got taken down by the same, by that gang, but the Troma fans they destroyed the third-rate, how do you call them, podcasters and the scumbag women who they thought we worked 2 weeks to destroy Harry Knowles. Oh, we're so exhausted. We're the what do you call it? The good Woodward and Bernstein and Woodward of Twitter. Whoopee! So I couldn't stop myself, and I made some fun of them. And at any rate, they started piling on. But the Troma fans, those women never put their head above ground. The third-rate bloggers tried weekly, but they were ruined. They were demolished. One of them said, "Ooh, Lloyd's paid public relations army is making me feel, really hurting me, and they're driving me back to the dark places." Oh shit, leave me alone. You don't poke the wasp nest. We have a fan called Fire Herpes, who has a following, and they destroyed one of those influencers on YouTube who had connected me with Pizzagate, and there were photos.
Holy shit!
They put my children's Facebook on his thing and all that. At any rate, the fans demolished him, and he apologized. But what a shithead! He had a photo of me in a restaurant, I think with one of my kids and my commissioner wife, Tony Podesta, who's a lobbyist. And yes, I was chairman of the Trade Association of Independent Movie Studios, 200 companies around the world. Excuse me, but we're trying to level the playing field, and we have a lobbyist to try to fight the lies of Comcast, and this is around 2004. So this fucker, we were having dinner with the lobbyist. What are you going to do? Right. So he puts my face in a red, I can't remember what he did, but total, not fake news, obscene news. Plus with the minor in the picture. Anyway, he apologized. But, what do they have to do that? Leave me alone.
Yeah, screw that guy.
Yeah, go after Tom Cruise.
Lloyd, out of all the projects that you've worked on throughout your career, is there one that sticks out to you that has kept you up the most at night, maybe the most challenging?
Well, hashtag Shakespeare shitstorm. I don't know if I mentioned this, but we filmed in Albania for 8 days, and then had 6 or 7 weeks in U.S. About 5 weeks of principal, but then pickup stuff. And I, at the end of it, being I think I was 75, I did a personal tribute to Alfred Hitchcock with getting my own case of vertigo, which is really fascinating. Here's another fact, Lloyd. Sugar Cookies was Ted Gershuni and my attempt at creating a lesbianic vertigo, because we loved vertigo. So
wow.
One of our favorite films. And I should have directed, though, because Ted made it boring. But it's still very good. Mary Warnow and Lynn Lowry are great, and the Warhol people are good. But it's too boring. I could have done such a better job. And Oliver Stone told me that. He told me, you get that guy out of there. But he was older, and the other guys were older. And we graduates of Ivy League schools who had a few bucks, we bought the act and invested, created the only X-rated movie Sugar Cookies to lose money. Although maybe in the fullness of time, it probably broke even. Who knows? It's a good film. It's just boring, but it's very interesting. If you love Vertigo, you ought to see it. Tribute to the great Hitchcock. 3 days, I'm lying in bed with the room. I thought, I hadn't had a drink, so it's when I have a hangover, it does that. I am totally sober. Stuck on You, which is my favorite comedy, and I think the most interesting. It's very heavily based on Tom Lehrer and Dan Freeberg, wonderful American satirists who unfortunately are kind of forgotten, but genius. And we're doing a movie I'm producing now, Anti-Hunting, and I think I'm going to feature a song by Tom Lehrer, his hunting song. I have heard that Tom Lehrer, and I've read that Tom Lehrer, when he became a 99 or whatever, he put all his art into the public domain so that you or I or anybody could share it, which is what everybody should do. 14 years was what Thomas Jefferson wanted, and now Disney has 75 years. And the copyright law shouldn't go on forever. Toxic Avenger, 24 years, okay, not 98 years. Give it back to the public. We can still do our own Toxic Avengers, right?
Right.
Nobody's going to stop Disney from doing their own Mickey Mouse, but maybe, who knows, Justin? Maybe Justin will make his own Mickey Mouse.
I've got ideas.
Angelique definitely wants to remake a feminine version of Goofy, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, he's a dog, for Christ's sake. What the hell's going on?
I'll make him a bitch.
Yeah, exactly. So the point is, there's nothing wrong. The public deserves to own Mickey Mouse. We've supported Mickey Mouse for 100 years. But Clinton and his, what was the word we used about the dog thing?
His bitches?
Yeah, his bitch are all about licking the Disney ass, right? So as a result, we got the millennium, the millennium rule that permits the conglomerates to do whatever they want and threatens net neutrality and let a lot of the laws that prevented monopoly, they got rid of them. Here we are. And then, of course, along comes the subsequent presidents who are even worse. Now we've got net neutrality at risk. So.
Yeah.
And you've seen what YouTube and Amazon are doing in terms of independent art. Your website may be a little raunchy, but if Bruce Willis has even worse violence, no problem there, but you'll get taken down. YouTube took down the Troma channel. We've been up for 15 years. They took it down, and luckily our fans made us think. Then they put it up. Total hypocrites.
What was their reasoning?
Community standards. Out of the blue. But the fans within 48 hours, it was back. But then Michael Hers, this is why Michael Hers is, I would have just kept going. Michael Hers says, no, we're going to take all the movies and bring them over to Troma Now, which we had started, and fuck YouTube. We'll put we'll put Lloyd Kaufman's opinions. We'll put some of the stuff that is current, promotional stuff, but everything else going on to Troma Now, which is all ours. And it's growing. Thank you, YouTube. You did us a favor, brother.
Fuck you, YouTube.
Yes.
That's terrible. It really isn't fair. Amazon, maybe it's changed, but Amazon owes us about $7,000. We can't get a human. This is from old stuff that they've been playing, and their algorithm says this. And we can't get anyone to pay us. So believe me, we need the money. I got a huge drug problem. I mean, we want to make some more movies. Well, you're very kind, and I hope we all keep in touch. And you've got my email. So let's at least get together in South Carolina, or maybe my daughter in Alabama, or if we go to Charlotte. We get invited to these things in Charlotte, where my wife is from. Let's try to get together.
We sure will, Lloyd. We'll be there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you'll love my wife. She's, as I say,
I love your wife. She's precious.
Isn't she great? Yeah.
Lloyd, thank you for giving us your time, man. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It's a lot of fun. Thank you very, very much.
Absolutely.
Please watch the movie and sing it to the world.
We will.
Absolutely.
Best wishes. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Right.
Bye.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Thank you.
Welcome to the night. You think you know Night Demon? Then the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast is for you. Step into the darkness as we peel back the curtain to give you an unprecedented, all-access look into the mind and the heart of the demon. We're talking band history, song analysis, studio anecdotes, stories from the road. It's everything a diehard Night Demon fan could want and more. This is the only place to learn the inside scoop, the deep dive trivia, the untold tales from the band members themselves and those closest to the Night Demon story. Need more? The sacred Night Demon Crypt will be pried open to reveal demo recordings that have never before seen the light of day, all with in-depth commentary by the band and the people who were there for the writing and recording process. This is a gold mine, a treasure trove of all things Night Demon. Head over to nightdemon.net or wherever you listen to podcasts. Listen to podcasts.